Got it. Thank you. So I want to go over the agenda and excited that we're going to be talking about transitions. And we have so many experts that are with us and who have agreed to share their expertise to help us understand how to navigate all of the various transitions that occur when we have a child or supporting our children with disabilities. And part of that is also going to be giving us some, I think, ideas and tools on how to be effective in that transition. So I'm doing the welcome now. We're going to hear from Trinell Bowman, who is our Associate Superintendent for the Department of Special Education. We have Eric Jorgensen and Amy Dwyer-Decati, I believe, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing the name. If so, please correct as we move forward, as well as we have representatives from our Prince George's County Public School System and our parents during this meeting. I want to, first of all, acknowledge a couple of people. We have our SECAC Executive Board. Myself, I'm Janie Payne, who is the chair. We also have Jamie Anderson Kumo, who is our vice chair. Frederica Fedri, who is our secretary. LaMonica Jones, who is our treasurer. And Sarah Whalen, who is our ex officio advisor. We have Jen Gagler on our outreach committee, and Kay Taylor, who is also on outreach. And our Prince George's County advisors, of course, Ms. Bowman. As I mentioned, we have Karen Andrews, who is the director, the Department of Special Education. We have Beth Hare, our instructional specialist, family engagement. We have Marcy Tarshawn, who is the program coordinator for family engagement, and Yvette Young, social worker for our Family Support Center. So welcome, everybody. So I am going to turn it over to Ms. Bowman to give us the updates from the Special Education Department.
Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to all of our families and colleagues that are joining us this evening. I just have a few updates to share with you, mainly some save the dates so that you can mark your calendars for some upcoming events. We always like to thank our board members for their support of our special education programs, as well as Superintendent House II. Just some save the dates. We have our Parent Empowerment Conference coming up between March 16th through April 20th, and we'll have a combination of in-person and asynchronous opportunities. We are having our second annual Autism Summit during Autism Awareness Month on April 20th, and that is a Saturday. And then we will have our Maryland Special Education Parent Survey that will be released, and we encourage all of our families to participate in that survey. We definitely use those results to guide and structure our parent engagement workshops, support to parents, et cetera, to help us get better as we work with our parents across the district. The other thing we wanted to share with you is our Transitioning in Youth webinar series. I know tonight we're talking about transitions, but it's just important as we think about those students who will be exiting our district to really tune in to all of that we have to offer to support you in your decision making. So we have our webinar series that will be held on February 8th and February 20th. New this year, we have our Secondary Transition Expo, really helping families completing the DOORS referrals process and the DDA, Developmental Disabilities Administration application, and accessing Maryland labor programs and offerings. So that will be held virtually on February 24th and then in person on May 4th. We're also going to have our annual Special Education College and Career Fair That will be held on April 11th at Fairmont Heights High School. And then our secondary transition youth fair will be on April 24th. So just wanted to mark your calendars for some upcoming events that may support your transition with your son or daughter. And that concludes my updates for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janelle. Really appreciate those updates. And I should share too, we always distribute the minutes from these meetings as well as the presentations that are given and so forth, so that our parents can have that information. So we'll be doing that. So I want to turn it over now to our first guest speaker, Eric, who is the founder of True North Disability Planning. And that's a national consulting company helping families, individuals, and professionals navigate the maze of disability benefits, resources, and services. He has been helping his clients find answers since his retirement from the Navy in 2012. He was widowed the same year he retired. At the same time, his 12-year-old autistic son, William, was completely dependent on his wife for everything. His frustration with the difficulty of figuring out what to do and navigating services for his son led him to start Special Needs Navigator. Eric created a new category, disability planning. He specializes in helping clients identify what they do not know and providing clarity for connecting the dots. He works with people and companies around the country, developing individualized solutions best suited to their circumstances. In addition to working with clients one-on-one, True North Disability Planning has a Substack, Waypoints, YouTube channel, and podcast, ABCs of Disability Planning. Eric uses Waypoints as a way to share his thoughts as a parent and as a professional. The podcast and YouTube channel focus on benefits, resources, and services people may not know of or want to learn about. And Eric thinks he can give an additional perspective. And I want to say and really appreciate Eric so much for his willingness to share his knowledge. I have benefited from it. My granddaughter has benefited from it. And for those of you who are not getting his waypoints, I strongly suggest it because he shares a lot of good information for us. And I can tell you it comes from the heart. So without further ado, Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Janie. And I'm going to apologize in advance. I feel like most of you are parents, so you get this, but my son's in the midst of a meltdown right now, so the staff is working with him. But if I appear a little distracted or if I look off to the side, that's why. I just want to be completely transparent about that. You know, I've just got a little bit going on in the house right now. The timing isn't ideal, but you know, you're parents, so I feel like you get it. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the screen and just knock through this. I feel really lucky that we have so many people from the school to talk about that, because the education side of it is where I'm really, really weak. And I think oftentimes a lot of people ask me about that side of the planning. So I'm really glad Janie put together the team she did. So I'm going to start with a timeline. I think many of you have probably seen something similar to this. It's just an overview of the times when I'm going to be talking about tonight. Is we start with the diagnosis, we roll into elementary, middle school, things to be thinking about, then we go into high school. And everybody's, in a perfect world, everybody's going to get out of high school into adulthood, and that's when we really have to figure out what we're going to be doing and how we're going to do it. So the first thing with diagnosis, many of you are probably already there since you're in this meeting. But if you haven't yet, this is when you want to make sure you start signing up for DDA. You want to sign up for the Medicaid waiver, the autism waiver. I understand there's a 7 to 8 year waiting list, maybe longer. But I still think it's always worth signing up, because if they get money to put towards that waiver, you don't want to miss out. So make sure if you haven't yet, you sign up for the Medicaid waivers. The financial plan, I don't necessarily worry about people mapping out their retirement, which is what I think a lot of financial planners talk about. I'm more worried about understanding what is the diagnosis going to mean to you. So for the easiest way for me to explain this is to talk from my own point of view. It's the story I know the most about. So when my son got diagnosed, we had to start getting him the speech, the occupational therapy, physical therapy, and insurance said they were only going to pay for so much of that, right? I think that's pretty standard. And then when he was in school, the IEP would build it in for certain things to help with his education. But my wife and I wanted to get him other things, so we had to build that into our budget for the extra therapies. So that's an idea. That's an example of when I'm talking about the financial plan. Are there therapies? Are there specific diets that that your child has to have? What's that going to do to your normal grocery bill or your medical plan? Should you take a high deductible plan, or should you go for a more standard health insurance when it's offered? Get to know about special needs trusts. Decide if you think if it's appropriate. I'm also a little contrarian here, where I'm not telling everybody to go out and get a special needs trust right away. I don't want to see people spend money on an attorney if they don't have anything to put into the trust. So a special needs trust, you can think of it like a bucket. It's there for you to put things into for your child after you're gone. That could be real estate property like your house. It could be a vehicle. It could be investments like your retirement accounts. It could be life insurance. But something needs to be in that bucket, or will be going into that bucket. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to go ahead and get one. And special needs trust and working with an attorney, it can be expensive. The average I think I've seen is somewhere between $4,000 to $6,000 to do an estate plan, which would be your will, durable power of attorney, special needs trust, all of that. And I would hate to see somebody spend that kind of money, but not know what they're going to use it for. Now, I will back up there, and I do think durable power of attorney, a will, all that makes sense. Everybody should have that. Everybody should be able to say, if I can't speak for myself, this is who I want to speak for me. This is what I want done. When my wife got sick and was in the hospital, we didn't have any of that paperwork, and it was very uncomfortable, and there was a lot of friction between my in-laws and me, because I was making these choices for her and didn't have anything to show that this is what she would have really wanted. But the special needs trust, understand what it is. It's a place for you to put assets, money, property, something else for your child after you're gone. There are two kinds. There's a third-party special needs trust and a first-party special needs trust. The third party is where you put everything except for what belongs to your child. So if your child has an investment account or a bank account, that can't be in a third-party trust. That would have to be in a first-party trust. If your child's grandparents leave your child money when they die, if it goes directly to the child, then it would have to go into a first-party trust. But if you do the planning ahead of time while they're still alive, you could have that go into a third-party trust. But again, you don't spend the money on a trust unless you know what is going to go into it. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just really want to make sure people, when they're planning, are planning for the right reasons and understand what they're doing, and not just doing it because, well, I think that's what everybody else is doing, or that's what I was told to do, but nobody explained why I was doing it. So we roll into, and I'm going, normally I would pause for questions, Janie, but I saw that you have questions built into the end of the program, so I'm not going to pause like I normally do. But if they want, I guess the easiest way would be if they put the questions in chat, and then you can just get to them after. So we roll into elementary and middle school, and this is where I have perhaps the weakest area, and I rely really heavily on the school and education advocates and things like that. This is where you work with your IEP team and you decide what does your child need? What can you put in place? What types of therapies do you need? If you're not familiar with low intensity support funding, this is where I really encourage you to look into it. As long as you're not on a Medicaid waiver, that could be the autism waiver since you're in elementary and middle school, as long as you're not already getting waiver services, you can apply for LIST funding, which is a $2,000 grant that can be paid, that can be applied towards things like therapies. I used it for Montgomery County's After All program, which was a place for my son to go after school when he was in high school, middle school. I used it for that. I also used it for music therapy for a while. But it's a lottery. So you would put it in. There's typically 2 times per year that it's drawn. I believe it's drawn May and July, but I'm not positive about that. It's been a while since I've been able to use it because my son's on the DDA waiver now. But you can go to the DDA website and look up LIST funding and sign up for it and make sure that you apply every year. Even if you don't get it, just keep applying for it because it's a benefit. It costs you nothing to apply for, and it could really help you out. The diploma or certificate, those are 2 tracks you can go down. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because you've got much better experts than me on this. It's just something that I want you to be aware that your child can stay in school until age 21 and age out with a certificate. And it's my understanding, and it's worked for my son this way, that certificate is no different than a diploma in terms of opening up doors for him down the road. My son can get a job, he can go to school. It's really a great benefit to let your students stay in school until 21 if they need it. The other thing to think about there is Maryland has a transition youth program, which is unique to Maryland in that the governor, and I believe this is going to continue, puts it in the budget that all students who are transitioning at 21 have their first year of services funded. So there's no waiting list for a student once they come out of high school. If they're on the DDA waiting list and they've been approved for future support, then as soon as they leave high school at 21, then they will be funded. It's still on you, the parent, to work with the CCS to find an agency that'll work with your child based on what their needs are. Or if you're doing self-directed, it's on you to go ahead and work with the support broker to find the staff, but that budget's going to be there. So what you want to start doing between now and high school, developing a really clear picture of what types of supports your child needs. And that's going to change as they go through puberty, as you get a clear understanding of what their likes are, what their hobbies are, what types of support they need. All that's going to change, but it's better to update documents and update the records than it is to try to build all from scratch when your child's 20 years old, getting ready to age out. So again, this is where you can work with your IEP team and really get involved. The psych eval, my son had a couple different psych evals at different periods through his school year. So again, to just stand, and I'm sure the school can talk more about that. I don't really remember what they were doing. I just remember they brought a psychologist in to evaluate my son. I think it was probably for the diagnosis, but he was in there during the IEP. They came in and talked during his IEP. The bigger piece is when your child turns 13, 14, you really need to buckle down and start thinking about, what does life after high school look like? What does life look like when your young adult becomes an adult and ages out of school or graduates with a diploma? I'm a big fan of giving everybody a state ID or driver's license. You can work with DOORS, which is the Department of Rehabilitative Services, as early as 14 years old. You can sign up with them, have a case manager assign your child. That case manager can come to the IEP meeting. My son's case manager came to the IEP meeting, worked with the IEP team to help develop what types of things would my son like to do. We actually got him to work over the summer a couple times, two different years, work over the summer where he was earning money and able to put some of that money into an ABLE account. And that was all through working with the IEP team. And my son saying, this is what I like to do, this is what I want to do. and then having doors there to say, okay, well, this is who our partners are that we can go out and try to get them placed at. It takes time, and it can take a lot of work. Doors paid for my son to get an evaluation where he did 2 mornings from like 8 to noon or something. And they did an evaluation on him for what are his aptitudes, what are his strengths, what types of, and again, to help him get that job down the road. These are things that you have to ask for. You have to request doors, you have to request their services. It's called pre-employment transition services, or PREEX. I have on here introduced law enforcement. I added that because probably about a year and a half ago, the cops brought my son home. He's in his 20s. He's going to be 24 this year, 25 this year. But he was evidently throwing things at cars at a public park. I don't know why. I never got the full story, but what matters is the cops brought him to the house, and it was a relatively easy encounter. Like he wasn't in handcuffs. He was, I think, definitely upset and embarrassed. But I feel they handled things as well as they could, instead of cuffing him or anything else. And that led me, because I hadn't done that yet, to reach out to dispatch and let them know that, hey, I have a son. He lives at this is my address. These are his behaviors. He chooses not to talk. So he has words. He can communicate. He just chooses not to. And the more you engage with him, the more he tends to shut down, which is not what you want when you're trying to engage with law enforcement or any other authority figures. You don't want somebody who's just going to totally shut down on you. So try to warn them about that. This is also a big deal if you have somebody who elopes, or the possibilities there of elopement. Make sure they know what's out there. Some states, I don't know if Maryland has one, but some states now have a registry where you can sign up and you can put the name on it. Other states are getting better about at the community level, saying here's a registry of who has a disability in the area, things like that. Don't assume that, and I'm shifting gears here from law enforcement, don't assume that because your child has a disability, they can't go to school, they can't go to college. I feel we're very lucky in Maryland, because Maryland has a program where if your child is receiving Social Security benefits, they can attend a community college within limits, and I don't have the exact limits in front of me, but they can attend the community college for tuition free. You would still pay for fees for certain things, but you can attend classes at a community college tuition free, and that's a pretty big deal. I don't see that in very many other states. So I think we're pretty lucky in Maryland to have that. And don't rule out that, oh, my child didn't do very good in high school, so they just shouldn't go to college, or why would they go to college? Well, if they want to go, let's see what they can do, and see what they can do to help. College is going to be different than high school. In high school, the supports that you get from IEP and 504 are mandated by IDEA. They're you've got them. In college, the child is going to have to advocate for themselves. They're going to have to go to the disability office, and they're going to have to communicate. So that could be something, again, you can work with the IEP team on and say, we want to help our child learn how to communicate, and we want them to share these things. Right before my son left high school, he had another psych eval. It was kind of a blur that whole time, so I don't remember everything it was for. I just want to prep parents to know that that may be part of the transition. It's so when everything happened with me, like Janie said, my son had been 12. And my wife had been his caregiver. I would come home every 3 or 4 months for 2 or 3 weeks, and the best thing I could do was just stay out of the way, because I was active duty military. So a lot of the time between he was 12 and 21 was me trying to figure out what his routines are, what he needs, and putting things in place, and just very reactive. I would much prefer parents be more proactive, because I just felt like I was always behind the eight ball. I just couldn't get ahead, and I couldn't keep up with what I was supposed to be doing, and I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I had a really great team. I lived in Montgomery County at the time. He was going to John F. Kennedy High School, and the team there was phenomenal. And then when I came up to Frederick to get him into the Success program, again, it was really, they kept me on the straight and narrow, because I really had no clue what I was doing. I was just following a lot of their examples. So when you get into 18 and over, if you leave school at 18, be aware you may not get any supports from DDA if you're not getting the Medicaid, if you're not getting the autism waiver. A lot of DDA, from my understanding, is they don't pay until 21 unless there's potentially a crisis, if you're in crisis mode. So you might be paying for services, you might be private paying for those. But after 21, you can get, the DDA will come in, they'll pay for things. The first day of the month that your child turns 18. So let's say your child turns 18 on February 20th. On February 1st, you can apply for SSI, and that will change the dynamic. If you apply for SSI while your child is living with you under the age of 18, you're probably going to be denied, because when Social Security looks at your income and your assets, they're going to take those into consideration, not just your child's. When your child turns 18, the only assets and income they care about are your child's assets and income. So they're going to look and they're going to say, oh, okay, well, either your child's working or they're not. This is what they have in assets. And this is where you're going to want to make sure they don't have more than $2,000 in assets in their name. And this is going to also be important for Medicaid, which pays for the DDA waiver. So you're going to make sure their assets, which are savings accounts, investment accounts, all of those, except for an ABLE account, is below $2,000. They can have a college 529 account as long as they are the beneficiary, not the owner. And that's typically how it's set up. Is typically the parents are going to be the owner of a college 529 and the child is going to be the beneficiary. So they can have that. It's not going to hurt them. So you apply for SSI. To manage expectations, you're probably going to get a letter from Social Security shortly, within 2 or 3 weeks of applying for SSI, telling you that your child has been denied for Social Security disability insurance. You didn't apply for SSDI, so why did they check? Well, it's part of their process to automatically look to see if your child is eligible for SSDI when you apply for SSI. Don't freak out if you get that first letter. Just know that it's coming. The second letter for SSI probably won't come for 6 to 8 months. It takes a very long time for them to process the applications. They may ask to schedule an appointment to visit with your child. If you don't keep the appointment, you're going to get denied. So if even if your child acts out, or you can't take them places, as harsh as it's going to sound, you want them to see that. It's only going to help you with your case. I know it's not fair to the child. It's not really fair to you, but it's the world we live in, and that's what we got to do. So you're going to get the SSI this year is $943 for the federal maximum. Most of the time, most of us, myself included, are going to have our children receive a reduced benefit. Social Security reduces the benefit by up to 1/3 because of what is called in-kind support and maintenance. So if the child is living with you and you are helping by giving them a place to live, you're not charging them rent, et cetera, then Social Security is saying that you are providing in-kind support and maintenance, and they will reduce the benefit by up to 1/3. So instead of getting $943, your child might get $600 and something. As in Maryland, as soon as you are approved for SSI, you are automatically approved for Medicaid. The other thing to know about SSI, if you become eligible for and approved for SSI before the age of 22, this is important. Before the age of 22, your child may become eligible for what's called the dependent DAC. And I'm blanking on what that means right now, and I apologize. But when you get DAC, your child will receive 50% of your Social Security, what you get in retirement, or if you become disabled, your child will get 50% of that while you're alive. And then when you die, that benefit would go up to 75%. So let's say your Social Security retirement check is going to be $2,400 a month. That means your child would get $1,200 a month while you're alive, and then $1,800 a month when you die. And that's a lot better than what he or she would be getting from SSI. So again, that's only if they become eligible before the age of 22. 24 months after they start receiving that benefit, they'll automatically be enrolled in Medicare, and they can keep Medicaid as long as they maintain eligibility, keeping their assets below $2,000 and whatever the income is from Maryland. If you have a child who is born male, you need to register for selective service. This is something I don't hear anybody ever talk about. It takes less than 5 minutes. You call, you register him, and then you just forget about it. If you get a phone call from a recruiter, I think the person that called me was a Marine Corps recruiter for my son. You tell them your child's disabled and they take you off the call list. But it's just something you want to do, because if your child ever wants to work for the federal government, ever wants to apply for FAFSA or anything like that, and you never know 10, 20, 30 years from now what they're going to want to do or what they're going to be able to do. If they don't register with selective service, they become ineligible for federal employment and FAFSA, and in some cases, some city government and state government positions. I'm not sure about Maryland, but it's something, it doesn't take very long to do, and you want to make sure you do it. At 18, you start thinking, well, before 18, you're going to want to know, should you do guardianship or support decision-making? I can't tell you what's right for you. I don't know. I can tell you I am my son's legal guardian because he is incapable of making his own decisions right now. My hope is, from what I've seen with other individuals who have autism, some of them have, as they've gotten older, they've become more, their brains developed more, and they were able to make some better decisions. I'm my son's legal guardian, but Maryland does have a support decision-making framework. That is something, if you are on the fence about, or you want to know more information about, talk to an attorney. They are really the best people to talk to about this. Not somebody like me. I can't tell you, what the difference is from a legal standpoint I can tell you in a rough framework, but you really want to talk to an attorney. And if you're going to go for guardianship, my preference would be that you would apply with an attorney. You certainly don't have to, but I would I did, and my bias is to work with attorneys for that kind of thing. Same thing when you're working out support decision-making framework, talk to somebody, talk to an expert on that. You can register to vote if you have a disability. Your child should be able to be given a choice. Housing is a hot ticket button. I don't have any magic answers for housing. Housing is rough. I will tell you, DDA has a new program out. I'm still learning about it, but the typical DDA waiver pays for 4 different types of supports. It'll pay for personal supports, which is your brushing your teeth, grocery shopping, dressing, all the things your day-to-day. It'll pay for community supports, which is just what it sounds like, in the community, finding hobbies, things like that. They used to be called meaningful day supports or meaningful day services. Vocational support, getting a job, keeping a job, that could be a job coach, transportation to and from work, and then residential. Residential means the agency is providing a place for your child to live, or they're providing staff. If your child has like you've got your child set up an apartment, and your child needs staff. Well, the agency will provide staff for that residential support. DDA is trying something new where they're helping people find housing and apply for housing vouchers. Again, I don't know a lot of information about this. If this is something you're interested in, I really encourage you to talk to your CCS, and find out what they can tell you about it. Just know that it exists. And then if you haven't done it for yourself, you definitely want to freeze your credit. You want to freeze your child's credit. This is to prevent identity theft. I can tell you it's not if your stuff is going to get out there in the World Wide Web. It's already out there. There have been so many different security hacks and everything else. You just might as well assume your information is out there. So the best way to protect you and your child is to freeze your credit. It's not 100%, you're never going to have a problem, but it really reduces the risks that you guys run of having something happen. The caveat to freezing your credit is if you're going to open an Able account for your child, then you would want to do that before you freeze the credit, because when you go to open bank accounts or anything like that, they're going to run a credit check. So open the Able account before you freeze the credit. I've touched on Able accounts, and I think Kelly Nelson with Maryland Able does a phenomenal job with this, and I think she's got her talks are out there a lot. So I would encourage you to go look for one of the talks she's given. But a Maryland, an Able account is it's a place for individuals with disabilities to have money without impacting their $2,000 asset limit for Medicaid or SSI. So you want to, you can put in, I think $18,000 this year is the maximum you can put in. You can have up to $100,000 maximum without it affecting SSI. It will never affect Medicaid. But if you have over $100,000 in it, your SSI is going to turn off until that benefit drops below 100,000. I feel it's pretty simple to set up. And my son has one. You're allowed, if you're working, to put in even more money into the Able account, because if you're working, you can put in, I think it's an extra $12,000 or $13,000 a year from your income to help you save. Again, the goal is to help individuals with disabilities save. I don't want to call it just a savings account, because that's certainly one aspect of it. You can put money into a savings account. But you're also allowed to invest that money. You can invest it conservative, you can invest it moderately, you can invest it aggressively. And that just depends when you're going to need to take the money out. But it gives you the opportunity for growth beyond whatever inflation's doing. Now, investments do have risk. So, take that for what it's worth. And then decide, do you want your child to go back to do additional college trades, plumbing, electrician, get an apprenticeship, things like that. So we talked about the employment. We talked about that you can get vocational services. You can still work with Doors. Doors is meant to be short term, and really what would work. The way it would work is when your child leaves high school at 21, they work with Doors. Doors gets them up and running. They find a job. Doors does a warm handoff to the DDA agency supporting your child. Let's say the ARCA PG County, because they're the one I'm most familiar with. So they hand off to the ARCA PG County. The ARCA PG County has employment has a DSP, a direct support professional, who's there to help with the employment. So Doors, short term, long term would be the DDA agency. You do have the option of doing self-directed services in Maryland. A great resource for that is this Self-Direction Support Network, Self-Direction Advocacy Network, SDAN. They're a phenomenal resource. They can talk a lot more about self-direction than I can. I can tell you, I tried it. It didn't work for me. So I'm back to working with an agency. I did not like trying to manage staff and find staff and keep on top of it. It was just another job. And it was just end up being more than I wanted to deal with. They are going to be 21 years old. They are going to have likes and wants and things that they're going to want to do, just like you did when you were 21 and older. So I would encourage you to give them as much freedom as you can. Let them figure stuff out, as long as it's not going to be too dangerous. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? Where do you want them to live? Do you want them to live in your house? Are you going to leave the house to them? If you are, how are you going to keep up with the house? If you're not, where are they going to be staying, in an agency apartment or a group home with 3 or 4 roommates? What's that going to look like? Do you have other children that you want to plan for, that you want to work and make sure that you leave money to the children without disabilities, as well as your child or children with disabilities? That's what I mean with legacy, is what do you want to leave behind when you're gone? And that goes back to what I said at the beginning about the special needs trust. If you know you're leaving your child something, then you want to make sure you have some place to put it. And that's what the trust is for. If you know you're leaving your child, again, using my example, I'm going to leave my child I have a $1 million life insurance policy, and he's also going to get my pension when I'm gone. So I have a third-party trust for my life insurance, and then I have a first-party trust for my pension, because I'm retired Navy. So that's how that's my legacy for him. If you're not doing guardianship on the individual, work with them to do their own estate plan. And when I say estate plan for an individual with disabilities, I'm talking about they should have a healthcare proxy. They should have a durable power of attorney to help them, when they can't. And that's all part of the supported decision-making framework anyway. So that's all tied in. And then finally, if they're not on Medicaid, what type of health insurance are they going to use? If you're a federal employee, you can keep your child on your health insurance beyond the age of 26. If you're retired, if you're in the military and you're going to be retiring, you can keep your child on your health insurance beyond age 26. There may be other companies, bigger companies or state or county government, where you can do that, but you're going to have to ask, because I don't know that. I know for a fact you can with military, and I know for a fact you can with federal employees. So that's everything I wanted to push out there. I'm looking at the clock. I think I finished a little early, and I'd rather do that than run late, because we have some pretty awesome speakers that I want to make sure they get an equal amount of time to talk. Thank you, Janie.
Oh, thank you so much, Eric. So appreciate all of that information. And I like the fact that we got a little bit of extra time, because we do have several speakers today, experts today, and parents may have some questions that they need answered, and we want the opportunity for you to get those answers. So I'm going to turn it over now to our next speaker. And one of the things that Eric talked about is, if our children have an interest in going to college, that's something that we should cultivate and support. And our next speaker is going to talk about a program at the University of Maryland. We have Amy Dwyer-Degati, Senior Faculty Specialist in the College of Education at the University of Maryland College Park. And she's staff at the Center for Transition and Career Innovation. She has her MS in Rehabilitation Counseling, Supported Employment and Transition from the University of Illinois. Amy has been working in the field of transition and career development for people with disabilities for nearly 25 years, providing direct employment services to students and their families, partnering with businesses, training transition personnel, and researching and implementing best practices strategies in the field. She established and currently directs the University of Maryland TERPS Exceed program, an inclusive post-secondary college program for students with intellectual disabilities who could not access college in a traditional manner. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Amy.
Thank you so much. I will go ahead. Can I share my screen? Does that work? Let's see. Can everybody see that? Okay, there we go. So yes, TERP Succeed. I know, thank you, Eric. I was actually taking some notes as you were talking as well, because it's important for families to know all the different options. College is an option. And I will talk about the funding that helps support families that they have worked on with our state agencies, ABLE accounts, all of that. And I also just moved my brother with ID and autism from California to Maryland 2 months ago, and I'm going through the process. It's hard to switch states. Here is, and I don't think this really works. We have a video, it's on our website that does an overview. I'm going to skip that part of it. I will make sure that I put in the chat our website so that you can go in there and we have that video in there. It's just an overview of TERP Succeed. So what is TERP Succeed? It is a 2-year certificate program at the University of Maryland College Park campus. It is for the students with intellectual disabilities who would not be able to go through a traditional admissions process for the university and get accepted and earn a degree. It is not the traditional pathway. We also say if you have a child who could get an associate's degree at a community college, that's still a higher certification than what we are giving, to be clear. So it is a non-degree program. It culminates in a certificate called the Certificate of College and Career Studies through our Office of Extended Studies. The students do have a transcript. They take academic coursework, undergraduate courses that are available to everyone, obviously without prerequisites that they don't meet the requirements for, but we have, hundreds and hundreds of fabulous courses. They can take it for audit for this program. Our audit looks a little different than a typical audit. The students are required to, go to every class, be a full participant in the class. They're going to do the assignments. They're going to take the tests. They register with their Accessibility and Disability Support Office, ADS, for getting any accommodations that they need for the classroom and for test taking. But some of their assignments are modified and they're not receiving a grade, but they do receive feedback from the professor through the typical ELMS platform that every student uses. And if there's a group project, they are part of the group as well. They do get supports from peer mentors, which I will talk about later. And we have an academic liaison who reaches out to every single professor and works with them on preparing them for having a TERP Succeed student in their class and what types of modifications they can allow for some of the assignments. So we've had students who, it's a 10-page paper. If they can get on paper their ideas in 1 page, that's fine for them. So we work with each professor. We also align it with their career interests. So students will choose a course of study. It's almost like a major for the 2 years that they are there, and take classes that apply to that interest area. And then we match internships to those interest areas. So they do take an initial course in the Career Center at the university for the first semester. That's all about exploration and practicing career fairs, developing their resume, doing some mock interviews, and getting ready for their first internship the second semester. And that course is actually taught. We partner with DOORS, the Division of Rehab Services, and all of our students have full open VR cases. And because of that, that funding helps us to partner with a DOORS funded agency who sends over an employment specialist who teaches that course and then manages all of the development of the internships on campus, which is a nice partnership with DOORS for that. So there's lots of career development activities, career fairs on campus, and they are part of the Career Center. She's housed in the Career Center. And our goal is that at least in that last semester before they graduate, that they have paid work. And so far we've been typically on campus or just off campus for that, but they're like a regular paid student worker in an area that matches their career interest. Here's who we are. So there's just some of our staff, and this was a picture of our students and mentors in the summer. We do a meet and greet before they start. So we bring in the existing, students who are coming back as seniors, and they meet the incoming freshmen, and then we let all the parents meet together. So it's just a great picture in the summer before they started. We currently have 10 students on campus. They live all of them live on campus in dorms. We started with 2 students. That was the 2 graduates at the beginning on the front of the slide. And then we moved on to 6 students. Now we have 10. We're trying to expand it every year. So who is TERP Succeed for? So the student who would benefit the most from TERP Succeed, we say age 18 to 26 is the start of the program. I will say 18 is particularly young. And as Eric said, I would encourage, if the majority of our students received a certificate of completion, an MSDE certificate, not a diploma, we encourage students to take advantage of being in the school system as long as they can. And so most of our students tend to be the age 20, 21, 22, 23, up to 24, have time to access a lot of those supports through IDEA or through the school system side. And then have a little more experience with work and maybe being away from mom and dad and all that kind of stuff, because they're, moving away from home. So we look for students who've had some work experience. Doesn't necessarily need to be, paid work experience, but some understanding of work, and that helps us in the career exploration, and, we go right into work. So has some experience with or shows ability for independent living. We do not offer 24/7 support on campus. So, they live in dorms. Typically, just up until this point is only our 3rd year. As their incoming freshmen, the families and the students have asked that they room with other TERP Succeed students, whether it's a returning student or a current student. They're not all in the same dorm. They're in 3 different dorms across campus. That is not necessarily the case if somebody wants to go into the straight lottery. We have connections in Res Life, and that can happen. And we've had seniors then who come back who've just met people on their dorms, and they're living with non-TERP Succeed students when they come back as seniors, which is exciting for us. Students need to have access to and know how to use a cell phone to communicate. I mean, that's just a college student thing, and that's just the world we live in thing. And I would stress managing a calendar and a schedule via a phone or some sort of technology is really important, and that practice should start while they're in high school. That is a struggle for many incoming freshmen. So some of the stuff that we see, it's not just for TERP Succeed students. There's a lot of stuff that freshmen suddenly get a crash course in, and probably should have done a little more preparing for it. We see it a lot. This is, University of Maryland, College Park is a big school. So someone has to be okay with being at a school with 40,000 students and a big campus and a lot of activity. So if it's someone who really likes, there's over 700 clubs on campus. It's Big Ten. We got football and basketball. It's a very active place. This is our argument for our goal is that at some point, this model of inclusive post-secondary ed should be at every college or university within Maryland. And it is our goal to be able to create a model that we can help other schools replicate in their own way, because, someone may not, like I said, want a big urban school. They might want a smaller school on the Eastern Shore, or they might want to be up, in Garrett County, closer to home. So it is our goal to make that happen eventually over time. So, but again, our option is the big, large university. And they are students who are paying tuition, room, and board, and have dining plans. And they are official students, so they have to follow the UMD Student Code of Conduct as well. They are treated as typical students by the university, by everyone. So they should enjoy engaging in social activities and joining student clubs. We really encourage that because that's a lot of the culture of University of Maryland. And it is not required that they live on campus because there are commuter students. But we do say you miss a lot of that skill development in community, forming friendships, independent living skills happens after classes end. And there's a lot of cool stuff that happens. They form rec sports teams mixed with the mentors. So they've had soccer teams, they've had like football teams, they've had volleyball teams, and they play at 10, 11 o'clock at night, in their thing. So I think there's just a lot that you learn by living on campus. We had one student our first year who commuted the first year, and the second year he was in musicals all over campus, and it was late night. His parents were getting real sick of driving in to pick him up because all the buses had shut down by that time. So he moved on to campus the second year and was much happier. The main focus areas, obviously the career exploration and career development, and we have strong partnerships with both DOORS and DDA, which I will talk about because we're very career focused. So like I said, 3 out of the 4 semesters, they are in internships, and then we work really hard with the agency and wherever they're ending up after, working with them on developing jobs in their interest area. Our goal is, just like anybody else who goes to college, that you get a better job having gone to college than if you didn't go to college, because you've gained extra skills and experience. So that's really our goal. The other is just the college success and course access. Like I said, they take undergraduate courses. And there is peer mentor support. We run tutoring 4 nights a week to really work on assignments. And there is a class, their freshman fall semester it's like a Terp Succeed class. They get 3 credits. It's an actual course that's listed in the course listing, but it is specifically for Terp Succeed student, as we manage that first semester of being on college and managing everything that you need to do. And then after that, they will have independent studies to work toward badges and their final certification. And then it's just all the courses that they pick. They register along with everybody else, every other freshman for those courses. And then the other key part that makes it inclusive is our peer mentors that are trained. It's a very robust peer mentoring program because, let's face it, no one wants to go to a class with mom. We look like a bunch of moms, let's go to like a football game with mom or anywhere with mom. So, we are instructors. We do office hours with them. They can come to us for problem solving, but we're not the ones that they want to be seen with around campus and do things with. So, I'll talk a little bit more about the peer mentoring in a minute. The academic, social, and career supports, again, it's not 24/7, but we do very individualized goal setting and tracking, and we follow those goals and get feedback from the direct support from mentors, from professors, and they build on those goals throughout their entire time with us. And then they have the chance to earn badges within the certificate based on their different goals as well. We do training of the RAs in the dorm. So we find out where they are placed, and then we are put on their training, summer training, so that they know about Terp Succeed, and that the resident directors, which I'm always very impressed, they are very well trained. They are very good at their jobs. And we've had, stuff that typical freshmen do, of course, our Terp Succeed students are going to do, and the RAs deal with. And I used to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Is this a problem? There's an alcohol related incident. There's a something related incident. I'm so sorry, and there's like, what? I've done 5 of these today, Amy. This is what happens in September and October with freshmen, and they handle it and they know exactly what they're doing. So it's great. Like I said, we have an academic liaison who reaches out to all the professors to manage the supports and do some modifications and do trainings on, what kind of information do you need for having a student with intellectual disabilities in your classroom. We have never had a professor say no, or, oh my God, this is going to be a problem. What's going on? So it's great. We have constant communication with professors. And if there is something coming up, then we can jump in and help support that. And then they allow peer mentors to come into the class with them. In fact, they actually enjoy having that extra support in the classroom sometimes. So the peer mentor coordination and collaboration, they help with assignments. They help with preparing for tests. It is an academic program. Like I said, they're not getting grades. And they are auditing, but there needs to be the desire to continue an education. Now, college is way different from high school. You get to pick really cool classes. I mean, some of our students have taken things like the psychology of happiness. Oh my gosh, she loved that class, which was super interesting for them. You know, all sorts of different, a lot of, you know, guys coming for sports, they take kinesiology classes, and then we've gotten them internships, you know, working with the athletic trainers for the club sports and follow them around. They're on the sidelines and they're patching up people who, you know, are bleeding. There's rugby, there's wrestling, lots of wrapping of things. And then working in the PT office, you know, because that was his interest. We have one student this year who was a student worker with the equipment department of the football team. So he was a student manager. And he this year got to travel to all games, all away games, and the bowl game, which was really awesome for him. So we're going to use those connections. He really wants to clearly work in sports. And as our peer mentors, if anyone is a Maryland fan and you know Roman Hemby, number 24, our leading running back, he was a mentor. He came to our class all the time. He's a great mentor. We've had a couple of football players. So that's really fun for a lot of the students as well. We use peer mentors to support on the job. And then a lot of the social and communication and scheduling and how to just be a part of a campus community, which is then really transferable to how to be part of whatever community you're going into. So that is really the sort of the natural supports that happens constantly that we see the most progress in. It's really fun. It's really fun to watch. So, so these peer mentors, we run a course, a 3-credit course that got approved at the University of Maryland. It is a gen ed course, checks off, I think, 2 different gen ed requirements. So we get students from across the campus. We had like 32 different majors last, in the fall class, which is fabulous. It started out as we had like very first year, we had 10 students in it. Now it's a 50 student class, and that was too small. So we had such a wait list that now in the spring, it's a 75 student class. So they earn a certificate from the College Reading and Learning Association that they can take with them as a peer mentor. It is a fieldwork class. So a good portion of the class is required fieldwork, which is just providing the direct support to students. So we have a whole spreadsheet of every student, where they're going. They can put in anything that they want to do and request, and then all the peer mentors go in that, and we do that even in the class, and they fill in their name and go, oh, I'm going to meet Luke here. I'm going to meet, you know, Ben over here. I'm going to do this with him. I can do extra tutoring. And we do the tutoring 4 nights a week, and we have 10 students, and we often have 10 mentors. They're doing the tutoring, so it's one-on-one. Then they have the chance, if they want to continue the next semester, they can earn a level 2 certification as a lead peer mentor. And so they do an evening seminar with us, and they get a stipend for that because they're not getting credit, and it's an extra seminar that they're taking. And they manage the incoming peer mentors, and they're responsible for specific students in their circle of supports to make sure that they don't have any major holes, and that they're following along with what supports are needed and what's happening. And then we have students that have done that, and they're certified lead peer mentors, and they become managing mentors. So we have over 100 mentors now every semester at various levels, and they've become friends with students. We get pictures all summer long during the break, mentors who have graduated and still live in College Park, who are going to the movies with them. It's really lovely, and something that I had not really expected would be so great. Some of these students have changed their career outcomes because of Terp Succeed, and they're going into the field now, or they are taking this new framework of inclusion and strategies for different kinds of communication into whatever field they are graduating into. So students who are engineers, who are becoming part of their disability affinity groups in their companies, students who want to become doctors and now specialize in working with people with intellectual disabilities in their practices and stuff like that. So that's really been a bonus that we could not have really predicted. So it's been lovely. The application every year opens December 1st, closes February 1st. So we're getting our final ones pouring in right now. We make decisions by April 1st so that they can turn in their housing application by May 1st with all freshmen. The application materials are on our website. The fees, it is tuition, room and board for any University of Maryland student. There is an additional fee. This year is $37.50 per semester, and that is a support fee. It is the only money that our program actually sees from this. We don't get any tuition from board. So this helps to support that peer mentoring program and a little bit of the extra staffing. Students starting in this next semester will be able to, in the fall, be able to apply for financial aid through the FAFSA. But what's been really exciting is we have been working with DOORS and DDA, who are great partners. There was new legislation passed this summer from the Rehab Services Administration, and we've been working so closely with Maryland. The way they have interpreted those regulations is they now pay tuition, room, and board for those eligible students with full VR cases. That's huge. That's a game changer, because we were trying to give, scholarships and figure out how to do it. But it's tough if you didn't plan for your child with an intellectual disability to go to college, because that was never an option. So you may not have a 529 plan for that. So all of a sudden you have to pull out thousands of dollars I wouldn't be able to do that. So we still encourage you can use ABLE funds for an ABLE account for college as well. The other thing is, for this programmatic fee, for those students on the self-directed waiver, we've been able to build that into their budget, and that gets paid for because it is all directly the support that they receive on campus. It is their community supports. We've also had students who have hired additional support for a very specific area using their community support dollars through their self-directed waivers. And that has worked out well for them as well. DDA has also been very generous in giving us some grant funding to pay for staffing. So they've really been a strong partner on this, along with Doris, who's now huge for our families. What we always want to tell families, this is a big move to go to college for anyone, and particularly for someone with intellectual disabilities, that this might not have been like the lifelong dream.